Bad Water by Layla Mann. Every year, the sluts would go away on a girls' weekend to some overpriced, alcohol-inclusive resort. One year, they went on a cruise and everyone got food poisoning and spent the entire time shitting and vomiting in their cabins. Another trip, they went to Ibiza and partied with the Eurotrash. She was not the architect of these vacations. That was up to her friend Michelle. Michelle had started planning for the next year on the day they returned. She'd known Michelle, Danielle, Betty, and Lauren since college. They'd married similar type men, except for Lauren. Lauren was married to a guy 10 years younger, had a decent career, a very young child, and lived in Brooklyn. The sluts rarely saw each other, except on these vacations. Michelle had the most money, Danielle the big fake tits, and Betty was on her third marriage. They loved to talk at one another, detailing their newfound love for organic peanut butter and Zumba. Betty was the only one who still enjoyed fucking her husband, but that was only because they'd been together for just a year. She looked forward to these vacations for one reason. She wouldn't have anyone demanding anything from her. She was totally free to do whatever she wanted. This year, they were headed to Mexico or some other hot place with bad water that should never be drank by outsiders. Their taxi pulled up to the resort. In front of them was a limo. They saw him get out. Danielle squawked a bit. "Oh, gee, that's blah, 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 who plays blah, blah for the New York Blahs." Because she knew nothing about sports except for the baseball games that her father blared on the radio or her husband's endless golf outings, she had no idea who this athlete may be. But she looked anyway. He was huge, wearing a dark gray suit, expensive sunglasses, red tie. His butt beneath his pants reminded her of a silverback gorilla. It turned her on. Once they found their rooms, they'd never share, Michelle sang out, "10 minutes, ladies. Meet you downstairs at the bar." She didn't feel like unpacking, so she just hopped onto the bed and closed her eyes for 2 seconds and wondered if she'd see the gorilla again. The sluts were at the bar, drinking things mixed with rum, mixed with bug juice, mixed with who the hell cares. They were clacking their mouths all at once, debating the benefits of Viagra, the necessity for longer aftercare programs, the hope to find a better masseuse, and the troubles of their fabulous lives. "We never do it," Lauren said. "Not since the baby was born. It's like we're too tired to give a crap." The sluts all looked at her with false pity. They knew exactly what she was talking about. They felt happy that Lauren was one of them now, except Betty. Betty just laughed and said, "We still do it all the time." They ignored her because she was on her third drink, her third husband, and half a bottle of her favorite cough medicine. They knew she'd passed out right before dinner. Instead, they commiserated with Lauren. How much of their lives sucked, how difficult it was to find good help, how they wished their cars were newer and their closets larger, how it would all get better someday. Then it was time for dinner. They sat around the table eating exotic dishes, too drunk to care about calories or carbs or gluten or whatever the fuck they were trying to avoid. She saw him sitting by himself at a table, the silverback. She stared at him. He turned and looked straight at her and her skanks. Then he winked. She just smiled at him. The whores hadn't even noticed they were too intent on their chocolate desserts. Betty couldn't walk, so they helped her to the elevator. They were all exhausted. She told him that she had forgotten something, went back to the dining room, and now saw him leaving. He walked right over to her. They made some simple talk, and he said, "Would you like to come up to my suite and have a drink?" "Sure, why not?" She was wearing a backless dress, and he reached out, put his paw to her shoulder, and guided her to the elevator. They were all alone, and he grabbed her to him, and he began slobbering all over her face. She was surprised by his brute strength and height. He towered over her, making her feel like a tiny little child. His suite was huge, just like him. There was a king-sized bed. The bathroom had a jacuzzi for two, and she was fascinated by his lack of personal belongings. He was still wearing the same gray suit. He slid the jacket over the back of his chair, undid his tie, kicked off his shoes, took off his dress shirt, and stood there in his undershirt and pants. She was getting excited over the prospect of fucking a gorilla. He had a briefcase that he reached into. He pulled out a piece of paper and pen, handed her it, and said, "I'm going to need you to sign this first." It was a non-disclosure agreement. She didn't even bother to read it, just signed her name, because who was she going to tell? She wondered what kinky things he was into that made him carry such a document. The thought of the unknown made her thong wet. She walked over and sprawled on the bed. She was drunk and sloppy, but the gorilla didn't care. He loved to fuck skinny-ass bitches. He was pawing at her breasts, pulling her dress down. He began to knead and suck on them. He was sucking on her nipples so hard that it hurt. She loved it. He reached his hand beneath her dress and slid up her leg towards her cunt. His large finger headed right inside of her as he said, "Damn, mama, you're wet," followed by, "I can't wait to taste your ripe pussy juice. And fuck you." He didn't stop there. "Mama," he said, "I'm gonna rip you in two. Then I'm gonna bend you over and do it again. You're gonna love my cock. It's gonna make you come and come." He never shut up. "You like this, don't you?" He was trying to fit more fingers into her, one at a time. "You're gonna come for me, mama, aren't you?" She reached down to undo his pants, but he pulled her hand away. "Oh no, that's for later, mama." He was pinning her to the bed. She almost couldn't breathe. He told her to get naked, and she did. "I love this ass," he said, with a smack to it. He flipped her over and began to lick her butt cheeks. He pulled her ass into the air and spread it wide. She was getting nervous, thinking he wanted to fuck her in the asshole. She tried it once, but it just wasn't her thing. She felt his tongue licking her asshole, slobbering around it like candy. He flipped her over onto her back with one quick move, and she couldn't believe his strength. He pushed her legs apart and said, "I love mama's pussy." And he leaned down and began to lick her clit with a fury. "Tastes like sweet, sweet fruits. I want you to come for me, mama." He continued to lick up and down and all around. He would lick and talk and lick and talk. "Let me make you come, mama. I want to make you scream my name." He leaned down and shut up for a bit, continuing to lick her with a passion, as she grabbed her own breasts, which still hurt from him. He looked up and said, "Smack my face and tell me to make you come." She just looked at him and then smacked his face and said, "Make me come, motherfucker." He got more excited by this and delved down in her snatch, and with each stroke of his tongue, she felt her body rise to meet his mouth as her clit grew and her stomach began to spasm as she came, the blood rising to her face and chest while she held her breath. She was lying naked on the bed. He stood up, still dressed. "I did something for you. Now I need you to do something for me." He walked into the bathroom. She wasn't sure what he was doing. She thought maybe he was looking for a condom. A few minutes later, he came out. He looked at her and said, "I need your help." She followed him into the bathroom, where he shut and locked the door behind them with a key. She got a little nervous as she realized she was only getting out with that key, and she was still naked. He took off his undershirt. His ab muscles were intensely defined like the rest of his body. He was like a machine. He began to undo his pants. He slid them over his large ass. She expected to see him wearing sexy underpants, but instead he was wearing some sort of a diaper. He put a towel on the floor, stretched out on his back. "It's my turn now, mama." He started to make a face, and she heard it. He began to shit himself. "Oh, yeah, yeah," he yelled out as the odor of diarrhea hit her nose. "Change me," he said as she held her hand over her nose. "Come on, there are wipes right there," he said. She didn't know what to do. She wanted to get out of the room, but figured the only way she would be able to do that was by doing what he said. She changed her kids' diapers many times, but was petrified to see what was causing such noxious fumes. She started to gag and reached over to get the baby wipes. "Tell me that I'm a good boy," he commanded her. "You're such a good boy," she said between heaves. She undid the tabs of the oversized diaper and pulled it down. She didn't want to look, but also couldn't look away. Covered in Montezuma's Revenge was the smallest dick she'd ever seen on a grown man. She held back the desire to laugh. Wipe it clean," he said. She was just happy that he didn't ask her to lick it clean. He lifted his legs up so she could clean his massive rear. Then she tried to clean his scrotum. As she did, she watched his tiny dick begin to grow into a wee erection. "Get it good and clean, mama. I know you like a clean baby," he said. She started to throw up, reached over the toilet, threw open the lid, and hurled. said. That's okay. That happens sometimes. The bathroom now smelled of diarrhea and vomit. She looked around for a fan or something or a window to open. He just stayed on the floor, his tiny cock standing up. I'm waiting for you, he said, to finish me. She understood what he meant. She knelt down next to him and said, I can't do that. You have to, if you ever want to leave this room. Now give me some of those titties and a good suck. She leaned over as he sucked her breasts again. Then he pushed her head lower until she wrapped her lips around his dick. He let out an, oh, yeah, mama, that's what baby likes. She just wanted to get it over. The smell of vomit and shit was making her sick again. She sucked him as hard as she could, hoping she wouldn't have to taste his cum. As he began to come, he began to cry. The tears ran down his face. She lifted her mouth from it and used her hand as he jizzed all over, the sobs racking his oversized body. He stuck his thumb into his mouth and curled up into the fetal position. The key in his other hand fell to the floor. She grabbed it, unlocked the door, threw on her dress, and ran to the elevator barefoot. The next morning, when the sluts came to look for her, she told them that she had drank some bad water by accident and spent the rest of the trip in her room shitting and vomiting, thinking, you fucking silverback.